Ross Stevenson with the Hawaiian Railway Society. We've been talking about the impacts of rail in Hawaii and how it made us, in a large manner, what we are today. And I'd like to talk about, again, changes in the ʻEwa district. The railroad, as I mentioned in an earlier program, made agriculture possible in ʻEwa on a large commercial scale. But I want to go back and talk about just change over time in ʻEwa to reflect lots of different things that you may be impacted about over time. The first one is this map. Okay, what it is this is the makai map of what's called, basically known as, on the center right, the former ʻEwa Field Marine Corps Air Station. And on the bottom left is Barbers Point Naval Air Station. If you look at these two maps, you're going to see portions or all of two sets of X's. And what it is this particular area is mostly in the coral plain that is not an area that has major agricultural possibilities. So what happened was the government at various times came in and needing airfields, went ahead and established those kinds of things in the non-agricultural potential areas. Now what you're seeing on this map is a makai series of paths over time. There is, for example, what's the 1825 Malden Trail. They're in yellow and kind of orange. Now today's Coral Sea Road is in blue, and the red is a potential north-south road that has been proposed. So what happens is, remember the Native Hawaiian idea, the ahupua'a. You would have resources in different parts of the island. You'd have in the uka areas the forests, water, those types of things. If you went to the ocean, you would have fishing, limu, and other things like that. So the Native Hawaiians would be constantly going makai for various resources. And even the land distribution system gave rights to the common people to use different types of resources within the ahupua'a. Now, this particular photograph, the next one, we talked about the railroad having an impact on what kind of things were developed in the ʻEwa Plain. What you have here is the OR&L, Oahu Railway and Land Company line, left to right on the bottom, and you can see a spur which goes from the bottom center out toward the middle right. And that was used to bring the supplies and all to build what became the Marine Corps Air Station at ʻEwa Field. You can see some of the planes. This is pre-war, and they're building up the military at that time for possible dealings with Japan. But the point is that the railroad was the way to access ʻEwa. The area on the bottom would be agriculture. The area on the top was just coral scrub. Now, the next photograph, to give you an idea of the coral scrub, those little Waianae Mountains behind there. This is what's called a Sisal field. What it was is the military in 1925 decided to go ahead and start experimenting with airships, which are also called dirigibles or zeppelins. And across the United States, they built several masts called mooring masts, or that they brought their large series of airships to, the Shenandoah, the Akron, a number of other ones. And Hawaii, this site, has the only mooring tower site outside the continental United States. And that's them building it. They're clearing the ground of the Sisal, and they have just 2 small buildings out there. This is, again, scrub land. It wasn't of any value just about to anybody, so the government went ahead and set this up. And it would be a good place for the military because it was outside of, for example, the landing fields at Luke Field, the landing patterns for Luke Field on Ford Island. So they could bring a big dirigible in here. However, we might mention that all of the U.S.-made airships ended up being destroyed in various storms on the mainland. So they never brought a Zeppelin or an airship to Hawaii. It was there. It was expensive to build. They had to dig up the ground and put these huge concrete blocks in the ground that they could eventually, as they raised the height of this thing, secure it with cables to keep it from blowing over in a storm. Now the next photograph, this talks about the mooring mast. But what happened was, you could see all the kind of rock loose, the kind of soil in the left photograph that was in this particular area. What happened was that once they gave up on the airship program and the issues with the Japanese in Pacific were growing, they turned the mooring mast into a control tower, started building in 1940 a actual series of airstrip, a warm-up field, hangar, and all. And again, this would have been dispersing their air arm away from Pearl Harbor, which was logistically a good idea, but it wasn't, as we'll show in a minute, was not followed through enough to make it totally effective. Now, we mentioned that the mooring mast, for example, had its own railway spur. This is another railway spur from the military, and it's basically been abandoned. You can see that the wood is rotting away and the rails are separating and all like this. But these kinds of railways built by the military were all over the place. For example, there was a railway at one time on Ala Moana Boulevard between, well, in front of what's now called Fort Armstrong or Forest Avenue, down near the Coast Guard base. So if in the first part of the 20th century, if you wanted to do any heavy lifting, you built a railroad, and that's what this is a remnant of. Now, I mentioned that in World War II, or preparing for World War II, they started building auxiliary airfields, etc. Around Oahu. They had one, for example, at Haleiwa. And this is a photograph of the actual battle around what happened in ʻEwa. You see a Japanese VAL, 2 of them actually, one in the top right and one in the middle left. And one of them is crashed over there into the scrub. And ʻEwa Field is that wide area in the extreme left, and Oniula Beach is right there in front. So there were actually air battles over ʻEwa in 1941. Unfortunately, what the Americans did, they discouraged the Japanese from attacking with ships. They had all these coastal gun emplacements, so the Japanese decided to attack by air, and the Americans basically did nothing to protect their airfields. So the Japanese, in order to attack the ships in Pearl Harbor, attacked the airfields first. So this is really where much of the World War II started. Maybe not the ward off the coast of Pearl Harbor, but this is the first shooting by the Japanese here. And the damage, this is just part of our history, that occurred on December 7th, 1941. You can see 2 destroyed airplanes, and you can see someone's car with bullet holes on the left. 5 Americans died here alone. Another one died at Fort Barrett, for example. And it was basically as the Japanese had planned, totally unexpected. But the Americans did not do it themselves any favor by lining up their planes out there to be easily destroyed. And what I mean easily destroyed, this is a photograph of all the wreckage when the military started collecting it to get it off the runways. I mean, this is just a pile of metal, as you can see, real mess. I would love to find the site for this for archaeological purposes. I bet if we dug some of this stuff up, it would tell us a lot about manufacturing and the kinds of airplanes in that period. Another photograph give you an idea of this history, and I'm going over this history in detail because if you're like me, I grew up in Hawaii, but I wasn't military, so I couldn't get on the base. So it was like a different world to me because, again, I had no access. This is right after the attack, when the first American planes were brought in afterwards. They're simply hidden out there in the brush. Again, you can see the stony soil. And this really didn't bring much protection whatsoever. But if you're interested in archaeology, which we are, find out more about our own history, this is the second stage of what they did in 1942. What those are is sandbags, burlap bags of concrete, just stacked up to create a temporary revetment. There's no protection overhead, but if one of the planes blows up, the next plane won't, because it will be protected. And these are some soldiers working on the aircraft. You can see they were quite small at that time. And again, you see the stony soil that is all over that area. Now, one thing that is very important to us, potentially to learn more about what we have in ʻEwa, is because the military had an airfield here, they really didn't disturb a lot of the ground. Unlike the plantation lands farther Mauka, which were tilled continuously for 100 years, this land basically sat fallow in between these revetments, for example. And so we can go ahead and look for things like native Hawaiian trails and other archaeological features, or even archaeological features from World War II. Now, ʻEwa has extreme importance to the U.S. World War II effort. These are a bunch of aircraft sitting on the USS Enterprise in 1942 before the Battle of Midway. And ʻEwa was very important to the Battle of Midway because what happened was that the military realized that they had to do something fast and prepare for another Japanese attack. So what they did was they knew that the lesson of Pearl Harbor was that the war would be a war over the air, not by battleships. And so what they did was they marked off the airfields and expanded the airfields at ʻEwa, but they marked off the airfields for the length of an aircraft carrier at that time and had their pilots train landing and taking off within that rectangle. So they wouldn't have the regular size of takeoff and landing space that they had on land. They had to be able to do it on a aircraft carrier. And what happened was they took this second bunch of planes and went out to Midway. And these particular aircraft were already antiquated compared to the Japanese aircraft at that time. They didn't have the battle tactics, for example, to deal with the Zeros. And what happened is these men went out and attacked the Japanese aircraft carriers, and they were successful in one way. Most of them died. Repeat, most of them died from ʻEwa. But what they did was they upset the Japanese timetable on the attack on Midway and the attack on the smaller numbered American fleet. And so they allowed the other American aviators to go ahead and attack the Japanese ships when they were most vulnerable, when they were changing types of bombs and fueling the planes and all on the decks. And the Japanese lost 4 aircraft carriers at Midway. And it was because of those, largely because of those boys upsetting the Japanese timetable and allowing the other American aviators then to come in and attack the Japanese, that led to that huge American victory that changed the scope of the war in the Pacific. So this is the planes from Ewa Field on the Enterprise before they went off. Another interesting thing about Ewa, the man that you see in the center over here is Charles Lindbergh. You may have heard of him. He was the first guy to fly between New York and Paris about 1927. He was a national hero. And he was an aviator par excellence, but he got involved with the anti-going into Europe war movement, and he and President Roosevelt did not get along. So he was not theoretically allowed to enter the war as a soldier. What he did, though, is he got himself in there through the assistance of some friends. He was at Ewa Field. We have this national hero, Charles Lindbergh, was at Ewa Field during the war. He would train pilots, and he actually went into combat, and Roosevelt apparently finally either didn't know about it or turned his back on hearing about it. The next photograph, again, we're talking about the kinds of land that was in Ewa and is in Ewa today, the soils and all. You see the train through the center there, again, basically setting the development potential of the different lands in Ewa. You have the Verona village in the bottom right, Fort Barrett in the top right, different military state sections over there. And I'm showing this again to remind you of the difference in the soil. This is very important. The area on the left of the Ewa Field is basically just coral shrub. And so it was mostly undisturbed. You can see the field there, but the area in the middle is not too much touched. And the area Makai and Waianae side, and even immediately Diamond Head, a small parcel, are untouched. And what that does is it allows us to see the archaeological record of Ewa. Remember, most of urban development on Oahu has been on the leeward side. And so what we want to do is get a chance to see what was there before urban development, because the area will probably be developed. We have seen, for example, sinkholes, which are depressions in the limestone, which coral is a form of. Scientists have found extinct birds and other things like that in there for the record of fauna and flora. And we know that the native Hawaiians used sinkholes, which are depressions in the coral plain, for anything from burial purposes, water sources, shelter, and so we'd like to go ahead and study those things. Now, some of the history of Ewa is still readily apparent. This is makai of the Ewa Field. This is 1942 on. These are what we call clamshell revetments. They would put P-40s and other planes in these. The land on the left, the dirt, that was actually a taxiway. It's now used as a horse stable. And these have stood up over time very well. What it is they poured these things out, 75 of them in time, and cover them with soil so that it's to camouflage them from above. Now, some things have gone ahead and not survived, but they are recorded. This particular photograph, or series of photographs, this was on what they called the Aloha Wall at the entrance to the Marine Corps Air Station ʻEwa Field, and it marks the logos of the different groups, military groups that served in that particular place. Other things, however, are really disappearing fast. This, for example, you see, this is an aerial photograph of the south side of ʻEwa. ʻŌlelo Park would be to the right. And see those circles marked there? Those are depressions with fresh water. And if you've been off Waikiki, you know that you can actually have underwater freshwater springs, where a whole lot of volume comes up right underneath the ocean. Most of these water sources are gone. The biggest one that's still left is Orty Pond, which is in the top center. We'd like to go ahead and study these further for archaeological purposes and any other records that we can go ahead and get to before major development occurs. Fortunately, some of this land is going to go to the city for public parks, which is great. It's on the coastline. But some of the land, the fate of it is unknown. So what we do is we're having different community groups get together and try and make a record of it. This is what the area looks like today. Again, it's shrub. You can see it's dried out right now. It gets very green in certain times of year. And that's a sisal plant there on the right with its stalk going up. So there's, again, remnants of the past, even this far makai. What we're doing is we're going ahead and looking at what's under the ground there. This is on a city-owned parcel. Not we, the Railroad Society, but some of the community is. This is a man using a metal detection device that can go down several feet into the ground, scientist, and he's going to write up a report. The data on this kind of thing in terms of what they find is given to the State Historic Places Division of DLNR. This is the kind of thing, again, you find. This is the remnants of those first set of revetments that they built were concrete in the bags. You can actually see the bag design in the concrete is broken up over the last 60 years. Trees have been growing through it, etc. But this is part of the archaeological record. Here is another example. This is a sinkhole that's been partially filled. Some people put some junk in it, but you can tell that there's topsoil in there because the tree in the right center is growing right out of it. Some of these are 20 feet deep. I mean, if you're walking through this area and you're not paying attention to where you're stepping, you may end up disappearing. It's really beautiful, and it's got great archaeological potential. This is a example of a LiDAR study. The little white dots that are on the left side, those are sinkholes. They use this kind of technology, for example, in Central America to find temples buried in the jungle undergrowth. The blue-black square area in the top center is an existing building. So what we're doing again, not we're, but what's actually called the ʻEwa Plain Preservation Project is one of several community groups, is going ahead and supporting these LiDAR studies. And lastly, we're talking about a LiDAR. Again, you can see how, right from this photograph, how the Railroad Society has preserved a section in the top center where the red line angles. The railroad main line for the OR&L is that white line just above it. The white line below it that angles to the right is Roosevelt Avenue. And these marked colored octagons, or whatever you might want to call them, are different areas that have been studied with LiDAR. So again, the Hawaiian Railway Society is a community organization that is wanting to preserve and share our past. And you have, in concert with our organization, lots of other groups like the ʻEwa Plains Preservation Group and the ʻEwa Preservation Society and all, who are working together to save things that really made us who we are and to answer the question, why? Why are things like they are? So we have the opportunity in ʻEwa to continue to celebrate our past. We have the opportunity to learn more about our past. And we have the opportunity to just have some fun. So I strongly recommend that you consider coming out again to the Railway Society. They're out in ʻEwa, just off Renton Road. We have rides on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we have lots of exhibits. And if you're into other kinds of preservation too, I'm sure I would recommend you talk to the ʻEwa Preservation Society about helping restore the manager's home, or the Preservation Society working on the ʻEwa field to go ahead and discover what's still there. But again, thank you for listening. We appreciate it. You're welcome always to come out to the Hawaiian Railway Society, and you have a good day now. Thank you. Bye.